after this presentation. Okay, so I think we will go ahead and start, and I hope that more colleagues will be joining us soon. So again, my name is Dr. Olena Tanchyk, and I'm a board member of AZTESOL, serving as the communications chair. So if you have seen any interesting, slightly chaotic AZTESOL posts lately on our social media, it's me. Sorry, bear with me. It's a learning curve for me. I'm experimenting and learning on my way here. Okay, so let me briefly introduce AZTESOL while you follow along with the slides. And of course, we will get to our webinar shortly. Okay, so AZTESOL is the Arizona Teachers of English to Speakers of Other Languages, and we are a community of educators coming together to support multilingual learners across Arizona. Arizona is incredibly diverse, and AZTESOL reflects that, and we bring together educators from different backgrounds to support students from many linguistic and cultural communities. So our mission is to support professional excellence in English language teaching through collaboration, through research, advocacy, and various educational opportunities. We are guided by values like quality, equality, diversity, collaboration, and evidence-based practice, things that really connect all of us here. I'm 100% sure. And just quickly, who do we serve? We support teachers, administrators, future educators, and community partners, all working together to support English language learning. So whatever you're joining from, so you're already part of our community. And of course, I'm sure today you are not only to hear about AZTESOL, and I will talk a little bit more about some professional opportunities that we offer later. But of course, the highlight of today's evening, if you are in the United States or if you are joining from a different part of the world, maybe it's early morning for you. Of course, the quintessence of our experience today is to listen to our amazing presenter. So today's topic focuses on education for social change, moving from global vision to classroom practice in TESOL. And I'm truly honored and excited to introduce our speaker. So please help me welcome Reverend Erin Tamayo. Is a bilingual educator, teacher trainer, and founder of the ALAS initiative, which empowers educators and students to move from learning to action for social change. She has over 15 years of experience in education, including teaching in the Isaac School District and working as a global educator and teacher trainer with Arizona State University's Global Launch Program. In 2022, she received the Arizona International Educators Award for her work with refugee students. In addition to her work in education, Erin has nearly 10 years of experience in nonprofit leadership and community organizing, including serving as the founding executive director of Arizona Faith Network. She is also an ordained pastor in the Presbyterian Church. USA. I almost said this right, bringing a values-based and community-centered approach to her work. So now be ready with your emojis, with clapping your hands, cheering, and drumming for wonderful Erin Tamayo, who is our presenter today. So Erin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Olena. Can you all see me okay? All right. I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, very good. Thank you for all your emojis. Wonderful, wonderful. It is so good to be with you today. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure and my honor to be here with you today, leading this workshop on a topic that is so near and dear to my heart. Just wanted to say hi to all of our friends from AZ Global Launch. ASU Global Launch. We have friends from so many different walks of life on this workshop, and we even have a board member, Miss Bunny Davis from the Kyrene School Board. So thank you so much all for joining us today. Before I start, I wanted to give you the opportunity to download the slides for this workshop and also consider downloading the entire curriculum unit on education for social change making. At this point, it's geared mostly for upper elementary school students and lower middle school students, but it can easily be adapted to students of all ages and even adults. So let me just show you what that looks like. If you go to that link, you'll see the flyer for today's workshop. And then if you go down here, you can see the slides and the PDF, which is the Education for Social Change Making TESOL unit. Okay, so you're welcome to download those and check those out. See here, oops, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? There we go, okay. All right, so we're going to be going through a lot of material today. And so I want, okay, wonderful. And so we'll have some quick time to interact. And then at the end, we'll have some question time to really talk through some of your questions. So let's try to keep some of our questions for the end. And I'll invite you to interact a few times throughout our presentation. And as we begin our time this afternoon, I really like to start with a quick moment of intention setting, especially with educators. I like to do this because you all bring so much to this space. According to an author named Reclaim, intentions are conscious choices about how you want to show up in your life. And I add how you want to show up in your classroom and in the world. And so I'm going to open up the chat and I'm going to ask you an intention setting question. And this is my question for you. As an educator, or as a person working with young people or even older students alike, what kind of world do you want to help create through your work as an educator? What kind of world do you want to help create through your work as an educator? So please feel free to answer in the chat. Don't be shy. Are you all able to answer in the chat? Is it on? Dr. Delfina says, I'd like our world to be kind. Thank you, Dr. Avila. I wish I had more time to unpack what that means. Anyone else? Claire says, I would like to create a world where everyone has a voice and is treated equally. Thank you, Claire. Olena says, educated, knowledgeable, peaceful. Very important, especially nowadays. Rebecca says, a world where we are all valued for our diversity and where we can be authentically ourselves. Love it. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Okay, anyone else? Where people have empathy and manners. Yes, very good. Thank you, Dr. Amelia. Okay, I'm going to keep going, but you're welcome to keep posting in the chat. So I want to use this question not only as an intention setting question, but also as a framing question. So why do we come to this work? Asking and answering this question allows us to recognize that we as TESOL educators and educators in general, we carry a really big heart. And we have this expanded consciousness about the world. How many of you would agree with that? How many of you would say, yes, we have a big heart and we have an expanded consciousness about this world? Okay, I hope you're raising your hand because I know most of you, and I would definitely say that that pertains to the majority of you. Thank you. Yes. So as educators, it's obvious that we care about what's happening in our classrooms, but we also care about what's happening in the world. And this is because we are in community daily with students from so many different backgrounds and lived experiences. And we see firsthand the journeys that bring them to us. We also see the forces in the larger society, right? The pushes and the pulls that show up in their lives and in our classrooms. And so we have this desire to make the world a better place for them. But one thing that I want to leave you with, and that is at this time, we can no longer simply ask, what type of world are we leaving for our future generations? But even more importantly, and as educators should, how are we working with the future generations to prepare them to help shape the world for a better future? And so in this session, I'm going to be sharing with you a framework that helps students use language, not just to communicate, but to understand, to question, and to shape the world around them. But first, I wanted to share, I hope you'll find this a little bit interesting. I want to share briefly about how this became part of my life's work. As a change maker, as a social change maker, my vocation actually started and was sparked by my fifth grade science teacher. When I was only 9 or 10 years old, we were learning about global warming at that time. And my classmates and I were encouraged by our science teacher to do something about global warming. And so we set out together to petition our local school board to reduce styrofoam use in our school cafeteria. And it was through that experience that I realized that I had the agency and I could help shape a better world along with others. And then this sense of agency helped to shape, this sense of agency was sparked again in my college years. And some of you might remember these times early in the 2000s. I was pursuing a degree in bilingual education, and Prop 203 passed here in Arizona. Does anybody remember Prop 203? Right. Not a great experience, right? So overnight, it seemed like our bilingual resources were being stripped from our classrooms. And so this was a true wake-up call. I realized at that time that education is deeply connected to policy and power. And then upon graduating, I went on to teach in the Isaac School District in Maryvale here in Arizona. And that's when I saw that unjust immigration laws were really affecting my students. And that experience pushed me to ask deeper questions about justice and human rights. And then that in turn led me to go to seminary, to become a Presbyterian pastor, and eventually a community organizer. I later served as a founding executive director for Arizona Faith Network, where I helped educate and mobilize people to put their values into action. And then, as life happens, right, I became a mom. And so I returned to education at ASU Global Launch. But I had a broader lens. I realized something at this time. And I realized that whether in the classroom, in a congregation, or in a coalition, the core work for creating a better world is still the same. It's about guiding and encouraging people to see their own agency, to see the world clearly, and then to act courageously together towards the vision that they hold for a better world. So this realization led me to found ALAS Initiative, and ALAS, of course, means wings in Spanish. And it stands for Aligned Learning and Action for Social Change, because I have seen that what was sparked in me as a fifth grade student can be cultivated intentionally. Classrooms, educational spaces can be places where students don't just learn about the world, but they begin practicing how to mold it, how to shape it. And so you, as educators, you yourselves are really central and part of that story. And so today, this afternoon, we're going to talk about a few important things really quickly. We're going to talk about, what do we mean by social change? Why do we use a values-based approach? I will share with you the Education for Social Change Making framework, as well as the pedagogical basis and the UN Global Vision for Education. We're going to discuss the essential elements for this framework And then I will share with you how you can easily incorporate these elements into your TESOL classroom or into any classroom or educational space as well. So let's keep interacting. I have another question for you to reflect on and write in the chat. And my question for you is, what does social change mean to you? Okay, so when I say social change, what does that mean to you? And as you reflect and you write in the chat your answers, I have a couple quotes to share with you that you can also use in your classroom. The first one is, and don't forget, keep writing in the chat. So the first one is, be the change you wish to see in the world. And this quote is, of course, attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. And the second one is that change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And this, of course, was given in a public speech by our former president, Barack Obama. All right, friends. So what does social change mean to you? Does anybody want to take a stab at it? Share any of your ideas. No? Are you being bashful? Oh, I don't want to give you the answers yet. Community problem solving. Thank you, Dr. Amelia. Very good. We're definitely going to talk about community problem solving starting in the classroom. Okay, so let me share with you, because it's really important to define what we're talking about, right? And so at its heart, here are a couple quotes for you. The first two come from my professional blog online, and the other two come from some scholars on the topic. So the first one says, at its heart, social change is about the collective work of envisioning a better future for our communities and acting to bring it to life. The second one says it requires you to reflect on your values, reimagine our reality, learn from our past and one another, and take social action that transforms the systems, the structures, the relationships, and the institutions that impact our daily lives. And then the other two here are really important. They come from different scholars. The first one is from Douglas Bourne in his book. You can tell I really like this one, Education for Social Change. And he says, social change can happen slowly or quickly in a linear, cyclical, or even pendular fashion. And then the last one comes from Spanos Stumpy in their essay, What is Social Change and Why Should We Care? And it says, ultimately, the direction it takes depends on how deeply we care and how willing we are to shape the future together. And so this is important. This last quote is really important because social change will always happen, right? But if we're intentional about it, then we can have a big impact on where we're going, an impact in our communities, in our countries, and in the world as well. And some of you who know me, you may be wondering, and I've heard this question, Erin, why are you talking about social change instead of social justice? And this is really an intentional choice. When I first started working on this topic in education, I focused on the topic of education and social justice. And then I soon found that I wanted to take a step back from this topic. And one of the reasons that I did so is because social justice comes with this set of predefined values of equity, fairness, participation, inclusion, and the inherent dignity and worth of every human being. And these values sound good, right? But as if we'd like to admit it or not everyone lives their lives by these values. And so shifting the conversation to social change really allows us to take a step back and to start by asking, what is it that you value? What is it that I value? And so this creates a space for dialogue and reflection and understanding our similarities and our differences. This also allows us to look at some of our social change heroes. We talk about Nelson Mandela, Rigoberta Menchú, Greta Thunberg, and we can talk about why they do what they do and perhaps what they value and how their vision for change was made out of these values, right? And so when we talk about social change in the classroom, I really invite you to do so through a values-based lens. And there are a few good reasons for this. First of all, it invites us to examine our values first, which then in turn opens spaces for reflection and dialogue. And this allows us to understand ourselves and each other better. So we're able to work towards common goals and understand why we have these goals to begin with. So this works really well in the classroom. And so this leads us to a clear definition of this framework that I'm going to share with you, Education for Social Change-Making Framework. It is a valued-centered approach that turns classrooms into laboratories for life, which are communities of learning where students and educators alike learn and practice together. We develop critical awareness, we practice dialogue, we practice creative problem solving, and we move towards collective action, right? That community problem solving that Dr. Amelia wrote about in the chat. And this leads us to ongoing reflection. And so in the end, we can practice shaping society together as engaged citizens of the world. So this is the overall framework I'm going to be sharing with you today. But before I do, I want to talk about the pedagogical basis for this framework, as well as the UN Global Vision for Education in general. Okay, so as with any framework for learning and teaching, it's really important for us to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us, especially those who have paved the way for new ways of thinking and learning, but also practically applying these strategies in our classrooms and in the world. Excuse me. And so this Education for Social Change-Making framework is built upon these following models and theories, as well as practical applications of education. I'm just going to go through them really quickly here. The first one, of course, is most likely the cornerstone of so much of my own writing and teaching, and that is critical pedagogy. The thought leaders on this are, of course, Paulo Freire, Henry Giroux, and Bell Hooks, and their focus is on learning as consciousness raising or developing critical consciousness about the contradictions or injustices in the world, as well as praxis, this action and reflection piece. Second, you've already heard me talk about experiential learning, about the classroom as a laboratory for life. And thought leaders in experiential learning are John Dewey, David Kolb. And they discuss that learning happens through experience, and it also prepares learners for participation in civic life. So, for example, remember the experience that I had as a fifth grade student petitioning the local school board about styrofoam use in our cafeteria trays? Well, this taught me later how to work with local city council members to improve working conditions for low-wage workers in my city. And so I learned through these experiences in the classroom, which later prepared me for adult life and civic engagement. Third, we have the basis of transformative learning theory from Jack Mazaro. that learning changes how people understand themselves and the world. It's transformational, not just additive. And social learning and collective agency, which builds off the work of Antonio Bandura and Paulo Freire, and that agency develops through modeling, participation, and collective efforts, and especially that we favor collective action over individual heroism. And so there's a lot of writing and reflection going on about this lately, especially in light of new information about Cesar Chavez, unfortunately. So as we move along, and this is where the global vision of today's workshop comes into play, we want to talk about the purpose of education. And so what better entity to do this than the United Nations, right? This slide has a lot of information, so I'm just going to give you a quick overview. In 1948, you'll remember that the Declaration of Human Rights came into play, and it was declared that not only everyone has this right to education, but it really expanded on the purpose of education. So you can see here, right? Education is directed to the full development of the human personality and strengthening of respect for human rights, and that education should promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among diverse groups. I know somebody mentioned in the chat that they wanted respect for the diversity in our classrooms. And then education shall promote, and then education shall further activities of the UN to maintain peace. And I think Dr. Delfina mentioned this as well. And then in 2019, UNESCO noted the wider purposes of education by publishing their handbook that tied education to peace building and also sustainable development. And so they expanded on the purposes of education to promote social justice aims, to help reduce marginalization in all its forms, and to combat discrimination and promote equality, as well as to overcome persistent and entrenched challenges such as gender inequality. And so as we go through the change-making framework, let's keep this global vision and the purpose of education in mind, because it really aligns strongly with this global vision. Okay, so here's the definition slide again. And basically with this framework, we're creating that spark that gives students the tools and the knowledge and the skills and the practice they need to become active and engaged citizens, demonstrating how they can work together for peace, justice, and equality, as described in the UN Global Vision. And, you know, I also just want to add that so often, especially in the United States, we teach our students about change makers. We teach them about Gandhi. We teach them about MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. We teach them about Rosa Parks. We teach them about Dolores Huerta and other social change heroes. We teach them what they did and sometimes why they did it, but we often don't teach them how to become change makers themselves, how to be the change they wish to see in the world. And so this is what education for social change is all about. And so moving right ahead on this slide, you can see the 6 essential elements for this framework. I want to share them with you as a whole cycle, and then we're going to look at them more individually. One thing that you might notice is that I'm using a natural language here of grounding, rooting, fertilizing, blossoming, growing, and renewing, because, and this is really intentional, because just as in nature, change making is and can be cyclical. And so to pursue and to achieve change, sometimes we need to revisit steps again and again as we learn and act and reflect together. So let's look at these steps. Sometimes I call them phases for social change making. We start by grounding in values. So asking our students and ourselves as educators, what matters to us, right? We're partners in this work as educators and students. And so we're asking both groups, all of us, to reflect on what matters to us. And then we root in reality, seeing the world clearly and noticing the gaps between what we believe, what we value, and what doesn't match what we value in the world. Number three, we fertilize with critical thinking. And so we're asking why, who is affected, and who has the power to make the difference on a topic or on an issue. We move towards blossoming with creative solutions for number four, which is imagining what could be different. So really getting creative here. Number five is growing with action. So taking real steps towards change. And number six is renewing with reflection, or learning from what happened and deciding what's next. And so one important thing to know is that this cycle, these skills, right, that you're giving your students, these are not just based on theory. These are actual practical pieces. This is what real change makers do out in the world. And so giving our students these skills, they're more likely to become engaged citizens in our communities. And they're more likely to help solve deeply entrenched issues that our society faces. And for language learners, this really transforms our learning, right? They're not just learning English. They're learning how to observe, how to analyze, how to imagine, how to act, and how to reflect. These are things that they're going to need in their workplaces and in their greater community. And the best part is that you don't need a new curriculum, right? You can integrate this into what you're already teaching, and I'll show you how you can do that. Or if you want a complete unit on change making, you can, of course, download it from the ALAS Initiative website and adapt it to your teaching context. Okay, so I've been talking a lot, and so I want to ask you for some of your feedback. I want to ask you to reflect on what you're already teaching in your classroom. What are you already teaching in your classroom? What are social change topics that you're already covering in your classroom or in your context? And I'm going to ask Dr. Olena if you can please launch the poll so we can mark what are the topics of social change that we're already working on. Are you able to do that, Dr.? There it is. Okay.
I hope so. It's always a challenge, right?
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can answer multiple options here. What are some of the social change topics that you're already working on in your class? You can scroll through them. There's about 11 different options. And if you have a different topic, you can also put it in the chat box. All right, I see answers already coming in. Give you a couple more moments. All right, one more moment. That looks like about 70% of people have already answered. Don't be shy. Share what are their topics that you're already talking about in your educational spaces. All right, lots of different topics. Okay, so Dr. Elena, I'm going to end the poll. Are you able to share it? Oh, I can share it. Okay, here we go. Are you guys able to see that now? So it looks like most people, or a lot of people, are talking about gender equity. Let's see, poverty and economic inequality was chosen, access to quality education. Awesome. Climate change and environmental issues. I know in a lot of TESOL books or language learning books, we often talk about climate change and environmental issues in one way or another. Access to basic needs, inequality in systems, wildlife protection, and of course, media stereotypes and misinformation. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm hoping we can copy that somewhere to make sure that we know. Anyways, okay. So I'm going to stop sharing those. And okay, great. So let's talking about context. Let's keep these topics in mind and your current teaching context, because I'm now going to walk you through each one of these elements of education for social change making. And in each phase, I'm going to include a quick TESOL lesson that you can use or adapt right away. Okay, so okay, so our first phase in this framework, of course, is grounding in values, right? And so, what was I talking about? Okay, sorry. Okay, so in as we're grounding in values, students are connecting their values to their lived experiences. We're asking our students to express and reflect on their individual and shared values because our values are the compass, the way that we live our lives, right? And so we want students to reflect on what matters to them and to share these values. And this is really a great opportunity for relevant dialogue that works especially well in language learning classrooms. I'm going to show you, so each one of these phases, I have a short TESOL lesson that I'm going to go back and forth between. And this short lesson, Grounded in Values, could easily fit into a unit in culture or identity that we have often in our textbooks. And so we're using a learner-friendly values list and sentence frames here. And I have, let me go back, sorry. I have a learner-friendly values list on. So here is the unit for Education for Social Change Making that you can download. And in this unit, you have a values list. You have a beginning and intermediate values list, as well as an advanced values list. So you can use those depending on the level of your learners. Okay, and so using the sentence frames and those lists, students reflect here on what matters to them, and they begin building a personal values list, which then later bridges to a classroom values list. And so you can expand this in many ways, right? You can explore where values come from. You can connect it to historic change makers. In the unit that you can download, I use books like this, right? Like, who was Martin Luther King Jr.? We read this book and then we talk about what did this person do for change making and what do you think they valued because of their actions? And then this bridges to creating a class values list, right? And so the goal is simple with this lesson. Students name their personal values and then they create this class values list that you can return to again and again throughout your social change making work. Next, we move on to root in reality. And in this stage, students are learning to read the world. So they observe what's happening and they ask, does this match our values or not? And so this matching our values question is really the foundation of critical awareness or critical consciousness raising. And it's a key skill for our future change makers. There's a quote here at the bottom that comes from my blog, and it says, when learning is grounded in real lived experience, students are better equipped to critically analyze systems of injustice and imagine pathways towards meaningful change. And then in this short TESOL application lesson, students can observe paired images or videos of classrooms, schools, or communities. And they just, first of all, they describe what they see. right? So some of these images that you share with your students, they should match their values, and some of them don't match their values. And so they're using sentence frames here. I noticed, I saw, this shows, this matches the value of, or this does not match the value of, because, and expanding upon that thought process, right? And so, oh, sorry. And so this is where the change making really begins, right? Seeing this gap between what is and what should be. And this is what Friday calls critical consciousness. And then we're bridging to the next phase, which is on critical thinking, right? So now we're moving deeper into critical thinking. So learners move beyond noticing to analyzing the causes, the impacts, the perspective, and the power dynamics. And so they ask, why is this happening? Who is affected and who has the power to make change? And this is where they understand systems, not just situations. So it says here, students develop critical awareness through observation, asking questions, listening, and engaging the world in dialogue. Okay, and so the short TESOL lesson, students are comparing situations like two classrooms with very different resources. And I have an example here for you. So you can share with them, for example, a classroom, you see this classroom here, happy students, great resources, books for everybody. And then you have this other classroom, for example, not too many resources, outdated resources. Students are sometimes reading from the same book. They have older books, right? And so they can talk about these two different pictures and analyze, why do you think this happened? Why did this issue happen? Why are the students working with such outdated resources? And they can do their research on this. And so they're asking, why does this happen? And they research, they discuss, they can even interview people of different perspectives, especially those who are most impacted. So they're gathering information about this issue and they can understand it. And this is also a good place if you want to do like a power analysis or a power map, you can see who can help you create change on the issue at hand. Okay, and then we move towards blossoming with creative solutions. This is where the excitement really happens, right? So now we shift from analyzing to imagining and really prototyping creative solutions. So here students take part in this process that we refer to often as social innovation. And so students are asking, what could this issue look like instead? What could this situation look like instead? And they start to design and build and write and role play their ideas. And then after that, they also, just as importantly, they identify who can make this happen, right? So they're planning partnerships in this work. Or they decide who can they reach out as decision makers to collaborate with. And you can give students a menu of ways that they can express these creative solutions. Here on the slide, it says, they could create a collage, they could write a diary or a journal entry, they could build a physical model, design a virtual model, like in Minecraft, my kids love Minecraft, or express their ideas through other creative ways like role play or storytelling and other creative forms. And here's another short TESOL lesson for you. In this lesson, we are reminding students of the issue that they've observed, right? Like in the classroom with the limited resources and not enough books, and the reasons behind it. So we also talk about including who makes the decisions on this issue. And we move into creative solutions, right? So students are drawing, writing, building their idea, and describing the change that they want to see. And of course, they identify who can help make this change. And this is really a powerful moment for language learners because they're actively using language as they have been working, this language that they've been working on in class, as well as the information that they've been gathering to create and share these creative solutions. And then the most important part, perhaps, is that they grow with action, right? So this is where students choose one action. This is where they really step into this laboratory of life. They take a small step, either in reality, as I did as a fifth grade student, or a simulated action, writing, presenting, meeting, or advocating. And this is where they really experience agency, right? So they're no longer just learning about the world, but they're participating in it. So you can give them a menu of actions that they can choose from. There's just a few here. For example, raising public awareness by holding a a community meeting or writing an op-ed, doing creative and grassroots actions such as holding a press conference, or doing advocacy and civic engagement, such as meeting with decision makers. And here's this quick TESOL lesson. Students are choosing one action, like writing an article or presenting a solution at a public meeting. Even simulated actions really work perfectly here. You can use the class as an audience. And the goal really isn't perfection, it's just participation. So you have sentence frames that are really powerful here. The problem is, we're here to talk about, we want, this is important because we ask you to, this change will help, and so on and so forth. And in the curriculum on my website that you can download, there's even action planning worksheets that can help guide you and your students. There's a community meeting planner, for example, opinion article planner, meeting with decision makers planner. So there's everything that you really need here to help guide your students in this process. Why do I keep doing that? Okay. Okay, and so now we're bridging to the final step in this process, which is renewing with reflection. Change making not only requires action, which a lot of times is the exciting part, right? But just as important is reflection. And so students here are asking, what worked? What didn't work? What did we learn? And this is what Freire calls praxis, right? This action and reflection working together to help shape the world that we live in. And so in this short TESOL lesson, the teacher can provide a response card. If you're using simulated actions, the teacher can provide a response card that kind of mimics what response the students would get from an action. So this gives them the ability to reflect on what they've accomplished and what they still can work towards. And students reflect using structured language. They can use the past tense, modals, future tense, depending on the language level of your students. And they can also decide, what's next. So this can lead to a full summary activity or another step towards change. Because real change doesn't happen just in one step. It happens over time. And so these are the essential elements for education for social change making. They can fit directly into your language learning goals. And students aren't just learning vocabulary and grammar. They're learning real applicable skills and tools to observe, to analyze, to imagine, to act, and to reflect together. So they're learning how to shape the world, not just to study it. And as I presented these to you, I have a couple more things to share, but I really want to throw the ball back into your court, right? So if we have a couple minutes, Dr. Olena, I'd love to hear from anyone who'd like to share How could you incorporate this framework into your own teaching? This is really a practical application piece. So I'd love to hear from you. What are you thinking? How could you incorporate this framework into your teaching? And how can you apply this framework? So feel free to talk with us, to share your ideas. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts? What is your feedback? How could you apply this in your classroom? Any thoughts?
Yeah, feel free to write in the chat, or Erin, maybe we can even invite people to unmute themselves and share their thoughts without writing. Maybe they're a little bit tired of writing by the end of the day. So guys, if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free. If you feel like you feel more comfortable with writing, so please share your ideas, your thoughts.
Okay, while we're waiting for any thoughts, I'm just going to go back. I can share with you, a couple benefits of this model. As we talked about, this sense of social responsibility, this model really fosters this sense of social responsibility, right? That I don't just belong to myself, that I belong to you, and that you belong to me, and that we belong to one another. It cultivates this sense of agency that we don't have to accept the world as it is, but that we can do something to make it better. Increases civic engagement. We talked a lot about that already. It gives individuals and groups the tools, skills, and practice needed to participate in democratic society. Some of your students in your classroom might not be from democratic societies. And so we can teach them, this is the voice that you have. You have voice and you have vote as someone who is part of this, of our society. And so this is how we participate in a democratic society. And it creates a stronger link between the classroom and everyday life in the broader community. And then you can see there's a quote on the bottom here. It says, when people recognize their ability to shape the world and to take action, this inspires others to do the same, creating a cycle of momentum. Okay, it looks like we have from Dr. Amelia, it says, with themed units in a course, there could be a lesson at the end of the unit about change making within the theme of the unit. For example, if there is a unit about sustainability, students could solve a problem on campus and come up with a plan after identifying a problem in groups. Thank you so much, Dr. Amelia. I had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Amelia the other day and kind of going through this framework. And she was able to just kind of come up with lots of different ideas. So I'm really grateful for you sharing that here with us. I know we're quite low on time. And so one thing I do want to mention, there are guiding commitments for this framework. And one that's really important to talk about is nonviolence. I'm working on a unit or a lesson right now with elementary students on how to do social change making using the movie How to Train Your Dragon, which has a lot of violence. And so we're talking about how could Hiccup create social change without killing the big dragon at the end, right? So things to think about, but nonviolence is a really important topic to talk about now and always. And I just wanted to end by thanking both Dr. Avila, Dr. Gracia, and Dr. Tanchyk for welcoming and for hosting this workshop. You have my information here. You have the website, alice.initiative.com, as well as my personal email and my Alice Initiative email. Please feel free to reach out with any questions, any thoughts, any collaborative ideas that you have. I'm always eager to collaborate with other folks, so feel free to reach out in any ways, or check us out on social media too at Alice Initiative. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Olena. I know you wanted a couple minutes also to share.
Thank you, first of all, Erin, for your amazing presentation, insightful ideas, and for sharing this meaningful lesson plans. And like you have mentioned, now you design lesson plan for elementary school. And I remember when I was at school, we were also talking about bullying, about nonviolence. So it looks like these issues and these points are internal, right? And like forever true. So that's why they are still actual and can be applied. So thank you very much for, again, for your thoughts, ideas, and for sharing all the information with us. Okay, so just a couple of more thoughts and ideas. First of all, people who are watching us online or will be watching us in the future on YouTube, thank you for doing that. So we will be sharing information and the links for the resources so that you can download lesson plan and everything that has been shared with us today by Erin and this amazing framework. So we would be happy to do that for you so that you can use it and implement in your lesson plans. And please reach out to us or to Erin directly. We will also share her contact information and let us know how you use these resources and whether useful. So one more time, thank you, Erin, so much for that inspiring and meaningful session. And before we wrap up, I just want to highlight a few ways you can stay connected and continue growing with AZTESOL. So we offer some professional development opportunities like our, of course, annual conference, and more information will be shared shortly on the dates, locations, and topics, and all necessary housekeeping routine that's important to participate in this activity. Of course, we have our regional workshops and online learning community. So today is just one step in a much bigger journey. We also encourage you to get involved, whether attending, presenting, or volunteering with us. Okay, and again, there are a lot of opportunities how we can stay connected. In the chat, I'm sharing information on our social media. So please subscribe, like, reach out, and we will be happy to contact with you and stay engaged. And for those folks who are watching us online or will be watching us online later, we will also share our resources. So please support us and let's stay connected. Okay, so before we leave, don't forget to complete the feedback form. You will receive a certificate after submitting it. So here is the QR code. You can either maybe take a picture right now or again later. People who are going to watch us, you can also pause, take a screenshot, or if you have other devices, scan the QR code and submit this feedback form, and the certificate of participation will be sent to you. So finally, thank you for being here, for the work you do, for being part of our community, overall be part of educators community in Arizona and beyond. And we truly appreciate your support in building strong, vibrant network of education across Arizona. So let's stay connected, let's keep in touch, and have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to see you again soon, online, in person, or in other future AZTESOL events and beyond. So if you have any question, this is our email. Take a screenshot, take a picture, pause the video and write it down if you like traditional methods of doing things, and reach out to us with any suggestions, opportunities, and collaborations. One more time, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope to see you in our other events. Thank you, Erin, and thank you everybody who was with us. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.